I call this meeting to order. First item on the agenda is discussion and possible consensus regarding the Operations Committee meeting minutes of May 14th, 2018. Do we have corrections, deletions, additions? I do have 3 corrections. At the bottom of the page, on page 1, Chick-fil-A partnership has been dismissed as they use an oil that has allergens for some of our students. Page 3 of the minutes, Dr. Mendo supplied the board with a letter from our legal counsel advising that the board of its rights based on statutes rather than statutes.
We've had that correction before.
Yes.
Which paragraph is that? I'm sorry, I apologize.
Page 3, top,
Okay, I got you.
and just check the possessive tense of its in that same sentence, just to make sure it's correct. Those are the corrections I have. Anyone else with any corrections? Seeing none, we'll take consensus.
Yes.
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 And yes, thank you. Next item on the agenda, item B, the Board of Education Financial Report for May 2018. Mr. Barone.
Thank you. So going through our financial forecast, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. We are projecting a surplus of $660,000 currently, based on what's happened during the year. Excuse me?
Is your microphone on?
Is it on?
Yeah, it's
Yeah, okay, I'll move it close. How's it? Can you hear me now?
That's
All
better.
right.
Go.
So
Okay.
we're projecting a surplus, actually, we're projecting a surplus of 1.866, and then we've allocated strategic plan items of 927,271, I believe in the middle of April, and then at the May meeting, we allocated another 278,900 in items that I'm going to hand out in the next section, but leaving a remaining unencumbered funds of about $660,000. We haven't seen a ton of movement on the projections. I'm just going to highlight the ones that I think are significant, either because of the dollar amount or because of what happened. And first one is just really under the net tuitions. We changed that projection by $7,100. I know that's not a ton of money in our budget, but it was interesting that the state number went up over the last month. It was at $2.094 million, and now it's $2.101 million, and that's a final number because we received the money at the end of May. So that excess cost estimate should probably change it. It's no longer an estimate, it's an actual. Any adjustments from here on in will be based on next year's ECS grant, so it won't impact us. It would impact the town. Transportation, we saw an increase of about $85,000. That was because we're not going to run the school buses as many days as we anticipated this year, so we're going to see some savings there. Okay. Salaries, about $67,000. Some of that was related to the school days, and another part of that is related to just different activity within the salaries, leaves, et cetera, that were happening. Unemployment, I think it's going to be about a break even now. We've started paying a little bit and projecting it out through the end of the year. It looks like we'll end up right about on target there. So I made an adjustment there. Going down to the other the counts at the lower end, the utilities, we saw a swing of about $54,000, and that's really driven by, I think, the oil bill. Well, I don't think, I know. It's really the oil bills, and I think we're running into timing as to when we get the invoices posted and when and for that matter, when the oil tanks are filled up. So that swung, I think, 2 months ago, it was probably around 100,000. It swung way up, and now it's down to about an $81,000 surplus. And I think that's going to move again before the end of the year. All right, and then related to the plant maintenance, looking at the open purchase orders, it looks like there might be another 30,000 available for a total of $95,000 surplus based on open invoices and purchase orders and what's happening during the year or during the end of the year here. That's the summary as to what we expect as of today. We still have a lot of open purchase orders and invoices we're bringing in to pay out, but that's the estimate. We think we're going to have about a $660,000 surplus after the items we've already allocated.
Mr. Votto?
So with the maintenance, we were able to do all the things we wanted to do, and we still have that amount left, the 95,000?
That's those are coming up. That's different. These are this year's funds. So the money that you're talking about, the items that you're talking about, were either in part of the initial requests or the secondary requests. Those are all, yes, those are totally covered. But the projection here was based on open purchase orders for, let's say, for example, painting or things like that. That's where these accounts, there's still money remaining.
That we're going to be using between now and the end of the school year?
No, this money, we've done everything that we were supposed to do, or everything is in the pipeline. These became because costs came in cheaper, or less expensive, shall I say. And so that's where those amounts remain. But again, we did cover all the items in the 900, the first 900, and the next 289 that were maintenance related. Those are all going to occur, and that's separate from this.
Too bad we can't. I'm sure there are other things that could be addressed.
Well, and that's where we have to look at the 660. So that's where that money goes into that 660, and that's one of the tasks tonight that you have as a board to determine how. But that'll go after July 1st, so that'll be part of the 1% account.
Oh, all right.
Because trying to
Do something.
allocate those funds right now and get the purchase orders out and the work accomplished, it won't happen. Do you have a question?
Mrs.
Yeah.
Castelli? Oh,
Oh, sorry.
Okay, hi. So you triggered a thought in my mind. Dominic, thank you. But I think the question is to Sal, if you even know the answer to this, I don't know. But our bus contract, if there's a snow day, do we pay for those buses for that day?
No, we only pay for the days that we run
We
the
do
buses.
only, okay. I figured maybe there was another way we could get a few dollars, but okay.
Well, we did because we cut the school year by the 3 days.
Right, no,
so
I
that's where-
understand. No, I'm saying going forward when we renegotiated a contract with
yeah,
your
no,
great
it's-
negotiation skills, Sal, I figured,
Yeah, no, we only pay for the days that we go.
All right, very good.
So.
Mrs. Raccio?
Since we haven't approved the budget for next year, will we adjust any of these line items to reflect what we expect our actuals will be for this year?
In terms of, for next year's budget,
Yeah.
that's how we were able to do the 411, 612.
Mm.
So we already reduced
But
next
there's
year's
m-
budget.
But there's more.
There's
from
more,
when
but
we met back in April.
correct, but these are not necessarily attributed to reoccurring expenses. So these costs, the ones in April were based on the fact that we did an analysis of the budget and looked at what would be continued over next year versus what was a one-time scenario.
Okay.
Some of these, like for example, the salaries account, when we look at that was because we had significant unfilled positions this year.
Right.
For example, we had a family consumer science teacher at Mark T. Sheen High School. It was a long-term sub all year. We were paying the person a sub per daily rate. We just hired a full-time person. So that is not because we need a full-time person. So that's one difference there. In addition, we didn't have a coordinator for special education that you're all interviewing for next week. That position was a substitute position for most of the year. Then when the person went over there, we didn't have a department head, so we had those positions. We can't cut those because those are going to be fully staffed next year. In addition, so that's for that example. The benefits were reduced appropriately. This was because we negotiated union contracts after July 1st last year. There was a surplus because we didn't factor that in.
Okay.
So we really did try to scrutinize these lines. I think the only number that's probably going to continue to give us potential opportunity for growth or for savings next year, leading to a surplus, is the special ed. Because of the funds from the state keep going up, actually, reimbursement is going up from the state to us. So that's one of the challenges there. But again, Dominic and I went through this. I actually, and I don't mean to publicly say this and put him on the spot, but I said, Dominic, when we went over this, we can't have, we have to be certain that we have accounted for anything that we could cut next year. And that's why we did get to that 411,612. Again, the other accounts, just,
Well,
now,
no, that answers my, just from the last time we looked at this, when we came up with the 411 to now, those are all non-recurring.
correct.
So those are just year-end true-ups, but they're not really sustained for next year.
Correct.
Okay.
And like, for example, like the 135, the 135,000 other accounts, the challenge with that is that it's like $500 in one account, $200 in another account. It's kind of, while it's certainly not couch cushion change in any of our houses, it tends to be one of those scenarios where it's truing up all those different lines as we go forward. So transportation, again, that is another one that's been scrutinized. I believe that we did cut next year's transportation budget as part of the 411,612. We cut part of the tutoring budget, which goes under salaries. So again, I do understand what you're saying, that the money is there, but I believe the hard work of Dominic has put us in a position where we think we'll be in a better place next year.
Thank you.
And when I say better place, meaning this is not a bad place to be in, because we're not like other districts, but we'd be having less of a surplus at the end of the year.
Any other questions on either the financial forecast or the Munis year-to-date report? Oh, yes. Mrs.
Why
Corso.
such a discrepancy in instructional equipment? Did I miss that?
Is that on the Munis?
Are you on?
On the Munis.
Because, oh, so you look at the Munis line.
Instructional what?
Instructional equipment.
It has to do with, we're purchasing some equipment out of the 927, the 927,000, and
Got it.
we're posting it to that object, but we haven't moved the funds there to level it off.
Then,
We're doing textbooks out of there, right?
yes.
Yeah, we
Correct.
moved.
Yeah, we
Yes.
moved items around.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, most of that stuff, since it was just approved by the board last week, was put into Munis just, later last week. So you'll start to see that post soon.
Any other questions on B1 or B2? Seeing none, we'll take consensus, starting with Mrs. Corso.
Yes.
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 And yes.
Actually, could
Moving on to-
I comment one more time? Just because I want to go back to Ms. Raccio's question. When we look at the 411, if just doing some quick, simple math in my mind, is that when you take 411,612 plus you take the contingency account, that's pretty much $850,000. That leaves us with about $1 million in unencumbered funds at that point. So when we look at that over trend, that shows that we're trying to make the cut, because when you take that additional $1 million, that was predominantly factored by the benefits and salaries, which run, in tandem when you look at if we don't fill positions. So I was just, again, wanting to put everybody's mind at rest, or at ease, at least at this point, that we have factored that into reducing the budget for next year. Just another way of looking at those numbers. All right. Now you get to your colored sheets again.
Okay, so moving on to B3, use of unencumbered funds and allocation of 1% funds.
Yes, so I can start off, and then I'm gonna let you go to the pink one. So the first two you have already seen. This is just giving you the history. So this was the 927 that you had already approved is the green sheet. The yellow sheet,
Is actually the one I think we want to discuss. The pink one.
oh, excuse me, the pink one is, the second one is the 279, or 278.9 that you already had discussed and that we already approved. And the last one is the one for discussion tonight. But we just wanted to have you have the three sheets that if you were looking at if something fell off, where to go. So thank Dominic for helping us out with that. So if you want to explain the yellow sheet?
So the yellow sheet is basically items that we we actually presented them in April, but I've just adjusted this document for certain things because we moved a few things off, like the classroom projection system, the network servers, and the steamer oven. We moved those and moved them onto the pink sheet, if you will, and approved moving forward with those items. So these are the remaining items that we found either on the strategic plan list, the CRRA requests we had, or the security requests. And they total up to $712,300. Right now, we're projecting a 1% or an unencumbered balance that could be moved over to the 1% for $660,143, leaving us basically a deficit of $52,157. What that means, we didn't overexpend our budget, just want to clarify, but we currently don't have enough, we won't have enough of the 1% fund to fund all of these items. And we wanted to bring these out and put them out on the table today to just discuss them, and then we're gonna probably have a meeting in a couple months. We have a final number for unencumbered funds and allocate the money into the 1% fund. We really can't do that at this point, but we would do that typically at the end of the summer. Actually, I believe we do it in September, October timeframe for next year.
What happens, just to clarify, is that the board takes consensus, they take action on the initial categories, but what Dominic is explaining is that once we finish out the school year, and once all the accounts are closed, which doesn't happen usually until the middle of July, then that number gets trued up. In the transfer authority, which is part of tonight's conversation, what that would do is that, say, for example, the 660 goes to 665. You would say that you give the superintendent the authority to transfer that 5,000 into the 1% account to be used towards these items. The town council doesn't approve this list of items until October. So that's where that part comes in. They don't put it on their agenda till October.
It's also, it's at a much higher level than our operating budget, so we might just we have very broad categories.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to kind
No,
of, categories like maintenance or equipment, and we don't get into the level of detail that we have in our operating budget for 1%.
You will have the backup as to what those categories are, but they don't spell it out. We did initially, when we first set up the first one, we made it very specific, and to be honest, it worked against us, and it worked against them, because it was kind of like if a truck came in $200 and $250 under bid, then we had to make all the adjustments, and they let us do that. So they didn't keep the money, but it was just, that's extra bookkeeping that's unnecessary.
Mr. Votto?
So you do expect to make up that 52,000?
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
And then
Correct.
you'll be able to get all these things.
Yeah, and again, the thing is, tonight, we want to make sure that these are still the things that you want. So this is not a rubber stamp, but this is just what we had pulled forward through that whole process. So it was kind of like we went through filter after filter, now we're on the last filter. So we just need to come to consensus as to what people, if these are good, if there's other things we want to consider. That's what tonight's about. Just not reoccurring expenses.
Mrs. Raccio?
So I just want to make sure, I think I get this, but the 1% that we're looking at here is just for this fiscal year, because there's still the 1% that we didn't do this for last year. It's just earmarked, put aside in case we have anything catastrophic with special ed.
Special ed. So that's
So when we
700,000.
say we're going to spend the 1% account, we mean only this year's 1%.
Correct. It's an annual 1% that is allowed to accumulate and to go into different funds. So you're correct. The 1% last year, the 700,000 is still sitting there, and that'll get renewed in the fall also. So they renew all of these because that was the 1% that they approved at the meeting when we all looked at each other at the town council meeting. Yeah. They approved last year's to move forward this year, or next year rather. But that's still there in the event that we have an issue with special education.
Okay. Mrs. McKay?
So good segue, Tammy. So I was just thinking in my mind, so the balance in our 1% account is, what was it, 770? Seven-
was
seven-
102 in special ed, about 15 technology, and then there's another 100 and, I believe, 40 related to maintenance type items.
That's been from prior years.
Correct, that's,
And
yeah.
then, right, and then this additional, 5.
660.
660.
I was right, I was
Yeah.
gonna say 660, okay, all right, thank you.
Mrs. Castelli?
That was my question, thank
Yeah.
you.
Great minds think alike.
Yeah.
Same page.
So is there ever, is there ever an expiration? You know, I think about that 700 that we put aside for special ed, and I'm grateful we did that, and I'm happy to keep it there. Is there ever an expiration to that, or do we just get the renewal from
Well,
the town council? How does that work?
It's not necessarily an expiration. That money, that's why they vote every year to
Right.
carry that over. The thing is that what we could do, say for example,
Change the line item.
you could change the
Right.
line item.
Going.
And then,
Right.
so you could go back and make a request that we'd like to go, say it's for facility study. That the study comes out and that we need to seed some type of work, architectural, engineering, something like that. And the town, rather than having the town bond or do something like that, we can say we'd like to go back to that 770 or 702, whatever.
We're not wed to
No.
that for special ed. I
We
mean,
just have to, the town council has to approve that.
Correct, and
But-
for our TV audience, you know, that was predicated on what we perceived as some cuts that we were gonna get from the state, and we were creating an insurance
Yeah.
for ourselves. I just wanna, you know.
Well, and I think that it's important, I personally think that right now, until after the elections are over
Right.
in November, we kind of ride that out, because I'm very concerned
I
about.
agree. I just, it's a nice, you know, cushion, I suppose, you could say, that we have available. And I like the fact that we earmarked it for special ed until, to Tammy's point, if we make a conscious decision to change that line item, but we know that that's earmarked there, and it's a safety net for us, so, thanks.
Any other remarks?
Do you want us to decide tonight about this?
Yeah, we kind of, sorry.
So, I mean, this isn't a departure. This list is what,
We
you know,
tried to,
has
yeah,
been
and that's why we wanted to
consistent.
give you the whole
Right.
thing.
So, I mean, I don't, yeah, I mean, personally, I'm not looking to, you know, stir the pot, I guess, lack of a better word. I mean, if this was our priority list from back to January, and we've chipped away at it, and this is what's left, you know, I personally am comfortable with it.
And if you recall, the reason why these ended up on the last list was partially because of their timing in the strategic plans, but also predominantly because they required the extensive bidding process. So we couldn't do these. You'll note that we were able to get, because of the hard work of Karen, the network servers. We thought we initially would have to bid those, and we did, but we were able to utilize some other existing bids. And so everything's been done on the up and up with, obviously, purchasing, but we were able to move some of those over more expeditiously, which was good, because that's important to have timing on those things. But these are truly ones that have to.
Yeah. So why are these items, you've got 3 items here that have a 0 cost implication?
Those were
because-
moved over.
Right, so why are they still on this list?
Because
just-
I am sorry, but I did that, so. I
Oh, no
won't-
problem, I'm
No,
just
no,
curious.
just because in case somebody had the list from the last meeting and
Oh,
said,
so
hey,
you're just
what
saying-
happened to what happened to the projectors? I just kind of said, I
Leave it
left the
there.
placeholder there, put the 0 in, so we didn't need to worry about the
Okay.
dollars, but just
Got
as a, as a placeholder to
Because of
kind
me,
of.
I just went through and compared the list, so.
Yeah, okay, well, there you go.
Yeah, we just didn't want it
It's
to.
No, that's
Nothing
fine.
changed, right?
Yeah, no, I have no doubt about, thank you, Tammy, for being my eyes. But I would have pulled him off, and I would have been fine with that, but that's all. Clearly, you made the right decision, Dominic, there. Based on the answer, I would say you'd made the right choice. Ending it there.
I don't
All
remember
good.
what color the
You
sheet
know
was
what?
that meeting, but
You know,
it's the
for-
same item.
Considering for a new guy and new board members, you got us all figured out. It's all good. Thank you.
All right, so what you're asking us to do is take consensus on the 66143 at this point?
660.
The use of, yes, the use and allocation in the 1% account,
All right, for 66143.
correct.
And You're saying that we will likely make up that $52,000 also? Or that will come out of the current?
What we would do is we will true up numbers in July. We'll have those trued up. We believe that based on closing out everything at the end of the year, that will make that gap. If we don't, and we're still short that, then what we would do is bring this list back to you before we went to October, and we would decide, okay, how are we gonna make ends meet? What are we gonna reduce from there?
And none of this gets purchased until after approval by the town council in October? Or it can get purchased?
This has to wait until after
Got it.
October.
So these additional cameras, these panic buttons, things like that, wouldn't be in place at the start of the school year, but they would be in progress during the school year?
Correct, and and even if we did bid them to get them the quantity that we're looking at installed, so that, those would not be able to, because they require such significant layers of bidding,
Right.
and bid specs, those would not be in place for the first year.
But at some point during next school year?
Absolutely,
Is what we can say.
absolutely. The Alice training is happening this summer, and will
Great.
be the first professional development day, I believe, when the teachers get back.
Awesome.
But
Um,
Great.
I would
Yeah,
just
right.
add, though, that there's no guarantee that the town will approve these to go in. I mean, they have to approve that. They could say no, and then these things won't happen. Sorry to be
But
the
they don't
downer.
approve these individual items, they approve.
They approve the dollar
They
amounts
still
going
pull
in.
the dollar-
Correct,
they-
correct.
They're not
Yeah, yeah.
approving panic buttons and
No,
cameras.
they would
No,
approve.
they don't get that
the-
authority.
and the amount of
Right,
money
yeah.
we could
They
transfer
just-
into the 1% fund.
Well, it goes
Absolutely.
back to, Tammy, the point that they can't, I don't want to say this because it sounds harsh, but they can't necessarily tell us how to spend our money, but they can tell us how much we have.
Correct.
So that's to your point, to your identification there.
All right, any more discussion on this? So we'll take consensus on the use of the unencumbered funds and the allocation of the 1% funds in the amount of $660,143.
Yes.
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 And yes. Item B4, the 2018-2019 budget.
Got another handout.
Oh, good.
We have a number.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
So this handout is very similar to the last. Format-wise, it's very similar. We've reduced it because, as we know, our budget was adjusted last week, and we've reduced it to reflect that. The biggest change is in the contingency because we had put that 411,600 and X number of dollars into the contingency because we were going to hold it there. So that was the big change, and then that I believe that was the major change in this number. So this is our final budget number for 18-19 of $101,700,990. I confirmed that with the controller at the city at town hall today, so that this is the final number.
Any discussion on that?
I just have a comment.
Mrs.
I'm
Deli?
very happy now, because this was my concern with leaving the 411 in there until next year, that it wouldn't be historically indicated that we only received a 1.1, and now it is, so
Right,
I'm very happy.
right. That's true.
Any other comments on this? All right, no. Mrs. McKay, do you have another comment?
No, it's okay. No, it's good that you cut me off.
Oh, all right.
It's good.
So we'll take consensus on the 2018-2019 budget in the amount of $101,700,990.
Yes.
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 And yes. Thank you. Item B5 has been removed from the agenda this evening. Mr. Deptula is not present to give us that update. On to the cafeteria financial reports for May 2018.
Dave, you want me to jump on the P&L? Sure. Okay, so I guess as we've been doing in the past, we're going to split this up a little bit. The year-to-date food C1, document C1 is the food services, the year-to-date comparison. this is basically our profit and loss that we do, and we break it out into the current month and year to date. And looking at the P&L, the food service department made about $5,800 in the month of May. That was I think a pretty good month. I think we were pretty pleased with a lot of the activity. Our a la carte sales are down a little bit, but our meals sold has been increasing pretty much every month since. Well, we've had a couple dips, but it's been increasing. So to I guess compare it to the May of the prior year is always difficult because there's a lot of different things that happen timing wise. But right now with our $5,800 profit, that basically means that we're for the year we've got about a $35,000 loss through May. And we have projected, I believe it was 42,000 or 44,000. So we're pretty much, I think, in line with where we thought we were going to be. A couple of, I guess, anomalies between the 2 months between last year and this year is we did not receive our second healthy foods check yet. It was received in May in the prior year, and that was about $18,000. So that explains a large part of the revenue discrepancy. If you look, they had $216,000 in revenue. We had $167,000, but $18,000 of that is the healthy foods check, which state tells us is coming this month, and we're expecting it because it's a big piece of the revenue for the month. The other component is we had 3 less school days in May, so our sales were. Or our sales days were reduced by 3 days. And so we're also, we're going to have 3 less days this year because of the weather we had in May. But, with that said, I think it was a good month. I thought it was encouraging that we were able to make money and, and our meals sold was our best month on a daily basis all year. If you move to the next document, C2, and you look at our per day variance, we were less than 0.5% off from last year's May. So the meals sold are essentially it's almost the same on a per day basis. Obviously the total's less because there were 3 less days, but it was a good, I thought very good. We were at 4%. We were down a little over 4% in April, and then we, in my mind, essentially caught up in May. And I think less than 0.5% is a pretty good number to be off.
Mrs. Raccio?
On the year-to-date columns, between 16 and 17, I don't think those number of days updated from April. You have 150 and
You're right.
145.
Okay, you're right.
So it really should be 167 and 164.
Okay, yep.
And then that's going to change your numbers on the bottom when you look at your revenue, meals, and
Sure.
expenses.
Okay. Thank you.
So I've got a question.
Mrs. McKay?
So I'm looking at comparing May 16-17 to May 17-18 in the expense. Payrolls down, benefits are up, but Social Security, Medicare is down, which would make sense with payroll down. How is it that benefits are up when payroll's down? And is that?
Is that a family members maybe?
I don't know. I mean,
It's more expensive this year?
I'm just curious. You would think that the benefits would be down too, in that column, or
Does that count, factor in unemployment?
It could be unemployment, could also
Because
be
I know-
that if we paid the waiver, although that doesn't look like the waiver number, to be honest. That doesn't, the waiver.
I mean, it's not
yeah.
big money,
Yeah.
but I'm just,
Yeah.
No,
I'm looking
but
at
I think
trends.
we can get you that information.
I'm just
Yeah,
looking
from
at
my-
trends, that's all I'm
No,
looking at.
I appreciate
We
it.
can get that for your
that
Friday
just-
update.
It just struck me.
But I guess I would add, though, that the payroll's down because, and I said this last month when the payroll was up, part of that April vacation was paid in May because of the way,
So it could be more of an accounting
it
thing
could
than
be
anything.
a little bit.
Yeah. I just,
but
to me, that would be
yeah.
a trend. You see
Yeah.
consistently them all
Sure.
trending in the same direction. That's all I'm looking, again, we're not talking big money here, but it's just the trends I'm looking at that struck me more than anything.
So to get back to the healthy foods check, the second part that's anticipated, how much about did you say that might be?
18 to 22,000.
So then that would cut our deficit a good amount.
It
Yeah,
would,
almost in half.
but I would also add that June is a tough month because it's short number of days, although because of all the snow, we're going to have a few extra days compared to last year. But it's a tough month, and if we were, I guess we'll have to see where our sales come in. But typically, we've lost money in June. But let me just, with that healthy foods check has not been accounted for in June.
Right.
So, it could help offset a tough month.
Okay. And then any deficit that we would realize at the end of the year would be paid out of accrued savings in that account?
Yeah, the deficit that we have would just, I guess, reduce our available cash in this fund.
Okay.
But I mean, we may, at some point need to move some money out of our savings account into our checking account in here. But, we've gone through this year without moving that money. We've just, based on our revenue or our cash receipts, we've been able to keep going, without moving any money out of there.
So the fund balance that we ended last year with hasn't been touched this year at all. So it was over 100, I wouldn't say it was 129,000. So we still have
Yes,
that. We haven't
yes.
touched that.
Is that on here anywhere?
No, it
That does
isn't, and it's
not.
actually something I was thinking we should maybe report on going next year, maybe have a cash position, because it hasn't been.
I forgot that we had
I
that,
want
to
to,
be
we could,
honest.
I'll find out, I'll get you the
Yeah, yeah.
official figure, but I want to say it was between 129, I want to say it was around $129,000. The other thing is that this summer, Dave's doing a lot of work for the work camp. That's part of the emergency drill that's being done at Sheehan. So we're going to be catering for a week, correct? 300 meals.
We're doing about 350 meals they're guaranteeing us for 6, 7 days. It's about $25,000 revenue a week. We're looking at possibly 10 to 12,000 profit.
Are those reimbursable meals or?
No, they are not. It's basically a large catering function.
Yeah, really
So
large.
the good news is that gives us, which we haven't had in the past, that the summer months in food services are difficult because you have nothing coming in, but you're still putting out. So that'll give us a little bit of financial stability that we can utilize. We wouldn't necessarily, we still are going to have to take money from that reserve funds, which we anticipated.
Mr. Votto?
So when I look at this Board of Ed contribution last year, 38,000, that was taken out of that fund balance, correct?
No, that was actually the
That was
Board
in our
of Ed. We
That
we
was in our
gave it.
budget.
Yes,
What
that
do
was
we
in
have
the,
in this
we
year?
didn't give
We didn't-
anything
We-
from the
we-
Board of Ed.
We didn't give any for operating. We
No.
are going to move some in for some to purchase some items out of that
But we
927,000.
and we have done that in the past, though.
Yeah.
That's not new practice, so I just want to make sure,
Yeah.
because the board members, I don't want there to be apples and oranges. It's apples to apples. In the past, the Board of Ed, the last 5 years, has paid for all capital items out of the Board of Ed budget, not out of the reserves.
Right.
So that's just a clarity point. So last year, it was purely just to keep yourself afloat. Here's the 38,000, to keep yourself afloat. This year, we gave no money whatsoever to keep them afloat.
Okay.
I'm still floating, Mike, by the way.
Mrs. McKay?
It takes a lot for them to sink me.
That's good. Glad to hear it. So,
Another good thing, what Sal was mentioning on the work camps real quick, we're putting 11 of my employees back to work.
that was my next question.
And they're excited. They're going to have a full week, and actually most of them are getting more hours than their average work. currently now, so.
I was just gonna ask you about staffing for that camp, and was that gonna be a problem for you, so that
Nope, we're all
you're
set,
one
they're
step
excited
ahead
to
of it.
work.
You're not only floating, you're buoyant, you're going away.
Well, our design challenge would tell you that actually Dave could float very well because of his area. That's what the students learned.
Height,
that
not
surface
area.
area. Surface area.
Height
Let's
looks
not
sounds
make
better
it-
than area.
Let's make sure we're clear
Well,
on
it's
this.
surface
This poor
area that
man.
would be transferred.
Good man. Don't make him out to be like this massive person.
No, but it's true. I'm just trying to make
Oh.
I'm just trying to make a connection for our, 'cause
All right,
always about the curriculum.
that's right. Yes. All right, so we've gone through C1, C2, we're on C3.
Yep, C3, if you turn to that page, is the participation comparison, and we are comparing May to April, and just some things that are highlighted. We noticed that the average meals in the elementary were up 22 meals versus April with the same comparison of days. So that was nice to see once again. Also, the average meals in the high school were up just 3 meals compared to April, and middle school was down 4 meals versus the April. We noticed also that the meals per day increased by 57 meals a day, which is, once again, is the participation is growing mostly in the elementary schools.
So what do you attribute that to? What's been your home runs, Dave, if you don't mind me
A
asking?
few menu changes were, believe it or not, we implemented a brunch for lunch, which is every Thursday now, because we noticed an increase in participation back in the winter. And instead of running it a couple times a month, we're running it every Thursday.
So what does that encompass?
It's just breakfast items. It's
Okay.
the heat and serve pancakes, mini, and everything's mini. And they also get a turkey sausage, and they get the yogurt parfait, which the girls are making from scratch,
Yep.
which they never had before, and the kids love the yogurt.
Yep.
So that's become very popular,
Yep.
being the #1 menu. And we're just playing around with a new fruit and pretzel plate now that caught on like hot fire.
Really?
And so we're finding some nice trendy things that they like, and also doing a few promotions and marketing it a little more.
Yep. Yep. Thanks.
Just to wrap up this sheet, we also noticed that the revenue increased per day by $301. Actually, that's not on this log, I'm sorry, I jumped. But overall, the revenue has jumped $301 from May to April. Our free meals on this log on C3, if you notice in the middle of the page, we did see an increase in 14 free meals on an average daily compared out in the elementary sector. So we're seeing a slight increase in free meals every month, and especially since the new Medicare provision came into effect in March. It continuously is going up. So it's good stuff to see there.
And that carries over, right, into next year?
Yes, yep. And then they have till the first week of October to change their status as they apply. Any questions on the C3?
Mrs. Braccio?
I just think that the numbers, again, the totals of the number of days to date that we've served, when we pull that in, I think our revenue's only gone up $49 a day. We need to up the number of days.
You're talking about the monthly or the year-to-date?
The
Or both?
year-to-date.
It's both. Year-to-date?
Yeah,
So
so
the
when we actually pull in the right numbers, the formulas will come down.
So the 145 year-to-date,
Is really 164, and the
Correct.
150 is 167. So when those change, the numbers on the bottom
yes,
will also change.
okay. We'll make that correction, get that back out to you guys. We did mention that in the last, what Dominic was talking about, the
Yeah, I know,
days.
but you probably already have that all calculated out and everything, but it does flow through to the other ones, so.
Okay. Any other questions on C3? If we go over to C4 is the marketing plan, and once again, as I do in most of the meetings, I just scan it. So the first one is the elementary, and I included some things here that we just did the first week of June, because we most likely are not getting together, if I recall, next month to report out on June until, or are we getting together? We are getting together, okay, wasn't sure. So anyway, I highlighted a few things in June that we just touched base, that we saw a nice advantage to the program. On the field trips, we were able to take a couple elementary schools on the first line item of Moses Y and Cook Hill, where the PTOs get very heavily involved in providing field days with their meals, and they pay for. I was able to come up with a promotional flyer and get it out to the principals, and Moses Y jumped all over it, and so did Cook Hill, and we kept it in-house is what I'm saying, so they didn't have to go out and buy and PTO service them. And just for instance, Moses Y last Friday set a record on the in-house field day, and I did a barbecue indoor menu. They jumped about 45% in revenue.
Wow.
She averages about 130 meals, and she sold 240 meals, and that was due to the flyer, the menu flyer going out to every parent 2 weeks before. So that just shows you on the marketing end, if you show them what you have, you should see a better result. So, and also 20 parents ate that day, and it was a great day there. And we noticed very similar strategy at Cook Hill too on Thursday of last week, where they jumped about 25%. So I'm very pleased with that. Just finally got together with the Fritz and the Highland group last month. I was able to talk in front of that group there. And Evan and I from IT finally hooked up, and he's been a great part of the, we got our first video set on some culinary things we reported out on, and we're going to post that to the website, and we actually got the video out to the high school parents last week via School Messenger. So that was a lot of fun to do. Thank you, Evan, for being part of that. And then the last one on that page is I was able to recognize my employees in May. There's actually a holiday called School Lunch Hero Day, and I went and took care of them with a nice little token gift. So nice recognition. And then on the middle school, high school, just towards the bottom on C4 on the second page, just a few things to know. Our Board of Health was mandated from the state on recertifying all the people that are over 5 years for recertification. We were able to find a private consultant and sign up 28 of our food service operators for this summer to get recertified in the new food safety regulations. And I was able to sit in on the student council and get a survey done over at DAG, and also at the same day, which was convenient, I was able to be part of their hospitality career day the same morning. That's it on the marketing, and then the last
I think,
handout you have is the customer service incident
Oh, yes.
log, and we did have one incident, and it was able to be resolved in the same day that I got the call. And I was able to reach out to the mother and talk to the principal about a small issue we had with a food. It's actually a bone in one of the boneless chicken chunks that we received. There was a default from the manufacturer. So student was fine, and I was able to call her just to give her a heads up. And otherwise, like Dominic mentioned, we had a great May. We're very happy. Unfortunately, we lost the 3 days with the storm. We lost quite a bit of product. I was able to retain about a little more than half of the product we lost. Due to the power outages in 3 schools, I was able to reach out to our dairy company and ice cream company to get some the foods that we lost, to get it donated back to the program. So that was a help, but we lost a couple $1,000s besides that. But the staff did great. They're controlling their costs, and once again, meals are going up, so I'm very happy with May.
Mr. Votto?
She wanted to go first.
I don't care. Go.
I just wanted to say, thanks, Dave. I think to see a lot of these things and going on and trying to, you know, the advertising and the extra work to put in to get this lunch program out there is something we really needed to do. And I really like the results. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Castelli?
So, as a homeowner, I know that if my electricity goes out and my stuff in the refrigerator, fortunately, I don't have a problem because I have a generator, but that would be covered under insurance. Do we not get any insurance reimbursement for lost product? Oh,
We-
the deductible?
Well, we were trying to actually file with FEMA, because FEMA, we were collecting our data all along. But I don't believe we were allowed to because it's a business. It's not seen as the school district, but you can elaborate more, Mr. Barone, because I know you
Well,
would.
I think you nailed it. They, FEMA's probably not gonna help us, on that piece of it. And, on some of the other work, we might get a little bit if they have, I don't even know if they've declared it a FEMA event. And,
Well,
yeah,
I don't
so-
even mean FEMA. I'm
yeah.
talking like your regular
Yeah, I don't think,
facilities
yeah.
insurance.
Our regular insurance, because we had this happen in the past, I don't believe we have coverage, or it's not traditional that there would be coverage of that, of loss of food.
Could we inquire, though?
We could
If,
certainly
you know,
inquire,
all I can
but
say
I
is
don't,
no.
I do know what happened with Sandy,
Mm.
because that was another issue at that time, and I thought we had inquired at that point with our risk manager as well as the, with the town, and we weren't able to, but we could again check into that.
Good point. Any other questions about the cafeteria financial reports? So we'll take consensus with the corrections that were mentioned by Mrs. Raccio to the report,
Yes.
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 Yes,
and yes.
thanks, Dave.
Strategic plans.
Okay, I passed to each board member the first document in a series, in the first area of the strategic plan. I'm gonna pass the next one. I'm gonna do this very methodically, because there's a lot of documents. And Ms. Corso, at the end, if you could just put the extra pile just next to you.
It's off the,
Thank you,
it's discontinued.
because I'll make packets for the board members who are unable to be here.
Yeah, just if anyone was
The next
following
one.
along on our agenda, the middle school breakfast update has been removed from the agenda.
Yes.
It's freezing in here. Thanks. You could change it then.
So we're just trying to get these documents passed out so that,
No,
Yeah,
that's,
this
there's a
is-
number of documents.
Okay, so you should have, in the first packet, or the first section, you should have 3 documents.
Okay.
So I'm not gonna read through all of these, but I just wanted to, this is one of the areas of strategic plan, the communication, community partnerships, professional responsibilities, and teacher leadership. So what you have in front of you is you have, the goals, the objectives, the actions, and then the update on the far right-hand side, looking at, where we are. The key piece of the first one, has been the work that we've been doing with the Student Success Plan. That has, as you know, we talked at another board meeting regarding Naviance in this area, that we're really leveraging Naviance to a greater extent. We're revising the way that we're inputting our Student Success Plan in Naviance. That is to roll out in the fall, so we'll be doing some work with parents and with students in that area. So when we look at the first goal of this, I would say that is the most significant area of focus. We did also try to implement the Family Resource Center on basically as a community activity this year. Unfortunately, it really did not catch on with families. But we are going to meet this summer to review the plan and see where did we miss it. I think it was the challenge was, I think the fact is that a lot of the families that we do need to reach, they're at different times. And that's the whole idea when family resource centers work, is they're open throughout the whole day, and they're more of a drop-in nature in some instances. And we were trying to plan evening activities. And even though we surveyed families and we found that that was the best time to do it, we tried to advertise it. Unfortunately, we didn't get the return on the volunteer time investment. It was no cost to the district. So when we look at goal 2, again, this is a lot of this is continuing in terms of our communication structures. We do have, and I didn't add it here, but we do have some other initiatives that will come in the fall that the college and career specialists are working on, because I wasn't sure what the enrollment is, but one of the areas in getting communication and getting exposure for students, provide college knowledge workshops for students in grades 9 through 12. One of the things we're going to add here is they're actually doing a college road trip the last week of June. We have about 32 students that have signed up to go on a tour of what college life would be like up in Rhode Island. They're getting hosted by Salve Regina, and they're going to be also staying in Providence. And so the students are paying for this, so there's an investment on their part, but we got a good turnout for the first time that the college
I'm
career
sorry,
specialists.
who's your target audience there?
They're juniors, rising seniors in high school, to give
Okay,
them that
got it.
experience
Yep.
of,
So
you
do
know,
they
to
literally
kinda-
go away and they literally go to Salve for?
Yep, it's two nights, 3 days. They go visit Salve Regina, they go visit Roger Williams, they go visit Providence, Johnson and Wales,
URI?
and URI.
Oh, nice.
And so they're kind of doing a circle, a geographically
Yeah,
appropriate.
they're all really close to each other.
So they're trying to do it so the kids can see a campus, experience a campus, live in a dorm. And so the students are paying for, they're covering a portion of the trip because the colleges they see it as a good opportunity.
So they're marketing it.
So they're marketing it, but it's a good opportunity to give those students who might not have the ability to do this with their families an opportunity to do this. And we didn't know how many students we were going to get, and now it's sold out.
Sold out fast.
Yeah, so we're very excited
So
about
what was
that.
I'm sorry, how many students?
Well, we have a coach bus, so we must be close to, I want to say
56.
we did 3 chaperones, so I think we're looking at, it must be closer to 40 or so.
And when is this happening?
The Monday, June 25th, right after school gets out.
Oh, wow.
So these students have made a commitment. I mean, that's a pretty good.
Did these colleges reach out to you?
Yeah.
No, this was not me. I can't take ownership for this. This was Kim McLaughlin and Jane Graves. They came to me with the idea in the fall, and they pitched it to me, and I said, if you can make it work and you could get the colleges to donate food and housing, because you can't make it cost prohibitive. And they said, okay, we'll work on it. And they came back, and the colleges, they reached out to them. One of Kim's daughter went to Salve Regina, so had a good connection there. There were other connections that they leveraged.
So in
it
other
all
words,
worked out.
they instituted this, it wasn't something that was already there and they
Yeah,
just
I-
bought
No,
into it?
Wow.
no,
They actually started it?
Yeah, they had gone to a professional development workshop, and they heard about not districts in Connecticut, but other districts doing this nationally, and they said, let's try it. So
I
they-
know a lot of colleges will host certain families at their homes and invite people to come, to get an idea of what the school is like, but to actually be on campus is a little bit different.
Yeah, well, that's what they felt. So you'll see that in here. Unfortunately, I didn't get that in here because I wasn't certain as to if it was going to
That's a good
occur
idea.
when I was revising this. But I didn't want to do that. The other part on goal 2, number 10, I am excited about the Boys and Girls Club Parent Empowerment Series. I was fortunate enough to be there last week. Tammy had stopped by also. It's going to be a great resource. They're looking to do a series of activities. We're going to be really heavily involved with our wellness coordinator, We're gonna get Dave involved with some nutrition items. We're gonna use it as curriculum opportunity to leverage. Carrie and I spoke already about doing some math and science and English language arts activities. It's nice because they try to serve dinner, and it's literally like an hour, which is just enough because they offer some babysitting and some activities for the kids. And so I'm really looking forward in that area. And then the other areas, again, are communication in this particular area. But again, I don't want to go through each page of this, but just those were some of the highlights from that section. The partnerships, the next document, the one that says community partnerships. Again, we continue to work in so many different areas. And a lot of this, as you can imagine, continues to be ongoing as we move forward. And so I don't mean to have it look redundant, but these are things that we could never stop doing. We have to have these partnerships. And we've been trying to go back and forth at central office, when do we retire something? But I think in terms of communication, it's hard to retire anything, because that would send the wrong message that we're doing away with communicating to individuals. So I don't know, does anybody have any questions on the partnerships? We are highlighting on the last page, on second to last page, page 11, we are implementing through Hubcap a pipeline program for recent graduates, as well as students who graduated from our adult education program. We just met with Workforce Alliance today to leverage them in that partnership to offer opportunities to train students or to make them be viable candidates for local businesses in town. So we are working on that. That's one of our newer areas of focus. So any questions on that one?
Yeah, I don't have a question, but I have to make a comment, because I do talk to other boards statewide, and we are so blessed. Our community partnerships are truly exceptional. And when I talk to other boards statewide, they struggle with this. And I don't think we take it for granted on any level. I think we appreciate it and value it, but we are really lucky to have these connections. And, you know, it just is, can you imagine not having these, and to be kind of a Board of Ed that's an island out there that doesn't get community support like we get. And it speaks to our superintendent, it speaks to our board, it speaks to our school system, it speaks to everything, and that people want to invest their time and their money to our Board of Education says a lot about what we're doing here. And I just see it, because I get hit up all the time about how do you develop those partnerships? How do you create authentic relationships with community partners? And a lot of Board of Eds struggle with it. So I just say thank you to the community members, but also to our school system, because they find value in investing in our school system. So it's a good give and take relationship.
The last section, again, deals with the professional responsibilities for teacher leadership. Again, as one would expect if you're in education and looking in from the outside, a lot of these will be ongoing. They're all always continuous opportunities. Professional development, as you recognize this year, one of the key things was to make sure that we're implementing professional development that's relevant and meaningful to staff. I think, as evidenced by even the professional development that was put together by our administrators in such a quick fashion for the 2 days that we had the storm, the value-added PD was very significant. I do have to give a large part of the credit of just facilitating that, not necessarily doing it, but to Carrie Latour, our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum. She has taken the templates that we had drafted and uses them meticulously with the staff to make sure that we're documenting, because we had put the templates in place about a year and a half ago, because people, again, we needed them to see the connection of where we were going, the vision, the mission, mastery-based learning, whatever it was. We needed to see that linear connection, and that template really, continuing the implementation of that template is key to that. So you'll see a lot about professional development, but again, it's always ongoing. And then, again, the other areas, when you talk about professionalism and professional responsibility, it's always going to be one of those ongoing opportunities. So, just wanted to share that. We'll
And now
move
we're handing out.
alphabetically, we'll move to curriculum.
I was gonna say, I don't have one.
No, we're past it, because there's a lot. I didn't want to, I figured everybody would get confused. If we didn't color code them, I should have done that, I'm sorry. And I'll turn this over to Ms. Latour.
So you'll notice in the curriculum and instruction strategic plan, there are 6 goal areas, and the approach that I took in updating this was to provide, wherever possible, a specific outcome to where we are in the spring of 2018. So goal number 1 really just speaks to every content area within our curricular department. And, any viable curriculum is continually reviewed, and ongoing development occurs with the management teams, with curriculum writers, and with the coordinators within the office. And intertwined within each one are steps that we're taking as it relates to mastery-based learning. So you'll see kind of each content area moving through, including intervention and preschool. Goal 2 just speaks to work being done in regards to particularly writing, world language, and fine and unified arts. Goal 3 speaks to students working independently and with others. So you'll see a running theme through this goal as it relates to habits of work and MBL practices. This is also where we included information about professional development, about responsive classroom and the work we're doing with restorative practices, and how it impacts school culture and climate. In addition to the facility project, or the facility study that was initiated through this year's budget process, and we just met last week to work with the firm in terms of, stabilizing the timeline and establishing what the work groups would look like in the summer and what we need to do. Goal number 4, just being prepared for next challenges in both school and in life. And this has bigger, broader themes as it relates to mastery-based learning practices, graduation requirements, assessment and grading, which is ongoing and always ongoing. Also, early childhood, looking at preschool, maker spaces, adult education, and pathways, which is all in progress and being worked on, in particular as it relates to preschool, because I know the fall update, it spoke to the NIAC accreditation process, which one of our schools has had their visit, and we're in the window for our other school and waiting, certainly with bated breath, to find out our results. And then the last one, just making real world connections, is goal 5. And then goal 6 would just be all students, all staff, all successful, which is, something that we continue to strive for with things that we've added in. Bridge Academy, that only took place 1 year ago at the high school. This past summer, middle school had the opportunity to start their own Bridge Academy, summer school, credit recovery. These are all things that are ongoing in our district to help support our students be as successful as they can be.
I have a question.
Sure, Mr. Bono.
I'm glad to see, we're gonna be piloting the social studies in the elementary level, right?
Yep.
Just some of the units, all the units?
The social studies work that's occurred this year, they've really made some very nice progress. So while every unit is not complete, they're continuing to work through June 30th. They have a lot of them established, and they'll start to pilot some of the lessons in the units to ensure that, like anything else, it's played out in the classroom the way it's intended.
And I see the same thing with the science standards.
Correct. So science is being implemented next year. High school piloted a lot of the lessons this year. They're making tweaks and revisions before implementing next year. And the work of next year largely is, because it's such a big curricular shift, is really to, again, ensure that the curriculum is well intended and well received by our students, and whatever adjustments and revisions that need to be made will be made.
Obviously, my only concern is in conjunction with this schedules on the elementary level. How are we going to ensure that there's the proper amount of time for science and social studies? I mean, is there a group that's coming together with a schedule, or are you just dictating what that's gonna be? Is the board gonna be responsible for doing that? I really think we need to have a set schedule so that every teacher is accountable for teaching science and social studies properly. There's not enough time.
Right. So we've already started having those conversations, recognizing that while on paper it looks all nice and neat and everything is, to the minutes that we've requested, but real life doesn't always occur that way. Mrs. O'Donnell has worked with not only the science teachers and the elementary school teachers, but we've had conversations at the administrative level about looking at our schedule and ensuring that the right amount of time is being set and spent on all the instructional content areas that we need to. So I already have meetings set up with K2 and 3-5 separately, because there are different needs at those schools where we can look to really keeping tight to our time. And we've had a lot of conversations about that as the year has gone on, because again, when you're coming back and you're transitioning from lunch or recess, how are we utilizing the time that we have, because our school day is not getting any longer, and how are we keeping time, integrating what we can to save minutes here and there, but also putting an importance on, we want 60 minutes of mathematics. We need 45 minutes of social studies or science, and it's usually taught by unit. So in some cycles it'll be more science, in others it'll be more social studies, but everybody does recognize the need that, especially with the shifts in curriculum to both areas, that there needs to be that time. It can't get usurped by another content, and it needs to be a focused time of day.
I also think as they progress, especially in the 3-5 level, the amount of time needs to increase a little bit, but also the skills that are involved in social studies and science, because what got me very concerned last year with this new middle school schedule was the extra amount of time for each class now. You have some kids coming from 5th grade that maybe had social studies once or twice a week. Now to getting it every day, or 4 days in a row, then just skip a day and then they get it. 70 minutes, what are they doing during that time that has prepared them back in 5th grade? That's a big change, a big adjustment to make. And that always concerned me. And that's why I'm hoping that in the 3-5 level that we are starting to add more time to the schedule of science and social studies, adding more skills, getting them prepared for the 70-minute class next year in 6th grade.
Yep.
One of the things, and I know that Carrie and I have both brought this up with the principals, and I know we even had some focus group with teachers in the past that I think will resurface as time goes on, is as you look at the upper elementary school, especially 4th and 5th grade, potentially looking at some changes in classes, so that students get that experience of shifting classes, maybe teachers, based on content. It's not always a popular discussion to have, especially with some of our teachers at the elementary level, because they see themselves as a teacher, having those kids, that's their family all day. However, I think as we continue to look at what's best practice and look at where we want to go as a district, it's something that we want to continue to discuss.
You just did it in 5th grade.
Well, that's one of the things to
Place to
talk
start.
about, just to talk, because depending on developmentally, I think, you go to other, and I know we're not other countries, but you go to other countries and kids change classes in 1st grade.
Right.
So that's, something that we need to consider, because then when you do that, to your point, Mike, is that you do keep that time sacred. Because if you're switching
That's right.
classes,
Exactly.
it's hard to not keep that
And not
time
only that, you know,
sacred.
there are people who are more, you know, they're more into math. You know, maybe
Right.
they
Yeah.
would be better to teach more math classes maybe, or just maybe teach a, well, we don't, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, group train, track,
Specialized.
track children,
Oh.
so, you know, that wouldn't make a difference there, but, I think it's a great idea to start.
I mean, we're starting to look at it. I mean,
Yeah.
because again, there's a lot of different levels of concern and question, and so we just want to work through that. But again, I think that what we hear from a lot of, you know, families also, that their children make the transition from 5th to 6th grade. They go from having really the one classroom
Yeah, it's a
teacher,
lot
a
of
few
change.
specials, to now going into 5 content area teachers plus the encore classes.
Expecting 5 different, you know, things, different ways, and
So it'll be a good opportunity to discuss that, especially probably most likely on the heels of facility and program study. I think that would make a good decision there.
Mrs. McKay?
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear. I mean, obviously, I guess, do you see more teachers open to the idea of being kind of more specialized like that? I don't want to put you on the spot.
Well, no, I don't think we've done, I wouldn't be able to speak to,
Yeah,
you know,
maybe that's not an
specifically. I know
appropriate
that
question.
it's been a conversation over the last couple of years, and I
Yeah.
think, you know, there's a variety of opinion, because, you know, there's the challenge, and I even know when I was superintendent in an elementary school district, our students in 6th grade really were the ones who did have the transition. We didn't do it younger. We started doing it in 5th grade, but we didn't really go below that because of the fact that we wanted all teachers to be teachers of literacy. So that was a concern that if a teacher doesn't, say, for example, you have an English language arts, social studies person, so to speak, humanities type of thing, and then you have math science, you want to make sure that your math science people do understand literacy or are invested in
Understand.
that.
Yep.
So it is,
You want
it's
'em well-rounded.
not perfect, but I think we could, my money's on the staff to help us make the best decision.
Thank you.
Mrs. Corso?
5th grade is in the middle school and other districts also.
Correct.
So they're
That's
teaching
true.
other districts, but that,
Correct.
my question, going back to science, when will our high school program of studies change to reflect, or will it change to reflect NGSS standards?
So our program of studies is updated yearly. So at that point, our curriculum was revised and approved by the board in the fall and has been kind of tested throughout this year, but it goes into full effect next year. So our programs of studies, the courses will be updated again in the fall to reflect any changes that are made at that point.
So it'll revise in the fall
Yeah, it gets,
So they're course
it's for
selecting in the
it'll be
spring
1920.
on the new, there'll be new well, are they named? They have different
I do
names?
not necessarily think the names are going to
Okay.
change, but, you know, each year, and this year was my first go at the process. You know, come October, November, everybody sits and we look, we go through, you know, each page of the
Mhm.
course catalog to ensure that it has the most up-to-date, you know, information based on any prior revisions. And it keeps getting tweaked until about January, and then there's a, you know, a due date, for lack of a better word,
Mhm.
so that it can go out to be copied and it gets in our students' hands in a timely manner. Thank you.
Other- Mrs. Raccio?
I had 3 things I wrote down because I'd forget them if I didn't. The NEASC report for Sheehan, there's a curriculum update due for that in October, so I'm guessing this reflects bringing us to where we need to be for that.
Yep, both high schools, I have their summaries of what needs to be done and the timeline for that, yes.
The Raising Readers program, that just piloted this spring at one of the elementary schools. I'm missing,
I want to say
don't remember.
Stephen?
It was
think it
either
was
Stevens or
Stevens.
Pond Hill, I can't remember. Do we know if that's something that's gonna be, I have a week care meeting tomorrow, I guess I could ask. I don't know if that's gonna be expanded or not.
Yeah, I haven't heard whether it is or not. So the last We Care meeting I attended, it was not mentioned.
Okay. And then, can you just help me remember where the maker spaces are? Because I know a lot of the next gen science standards are written with that design thinking. And do we have enough maker spaces to accommodate the curriculum as it's being implemented?
I think we do, because with part of the green sheet, there was money allocated for the 2 high schools to purchase necessary equipment for maker spaces within their schools, each school. Middle school has a lot of equipment. 3-5 does. So right now, the only place we haven't expanded into would be K2.
Okay. Help me
Um,
with the green sheet, was that
the
pre or
screen sheet.
post-October?
This,
Oh, that was the
That was
first
done.
round.
Okay,
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
that's
those are,
done.
they're already
Okay.
ordering.
yep.
Okay,
So,
They're ordering.
I don't know, I'll tell you which goal in a minute, as soon as I put my eyes on it.
so we're good then for the curriculum as it's rolling out. We can start implementing it as written with that integrity of
Correct.
using the makerspaces. Okay,
And I think that when we
Goal
do,
4.
okay.
when we,
Yeah, that's where I had it. I'm sorry, I should have
when
told
we
you.
do these updates again in the fall, because that's really based on a lot of the work that we'll do through steering committees, I think we wouldn't be, or you shouldn't be surprised if we see the K2 as part of that, another layer of makerspace opportunity. So,
That's it, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments on the curriculum portion of the strategic plan?
all
All
right.
right, we're going to the next
Continuing
portion.
alphabetically, we'll go to district climate. I will say that tonight I will pass out the facilities, but if you have questions, if you could just get those to me, I can get them to Mark, but tonight we'll just pass out the facilities. So the next one will just be a pass out, and then doing cleanup will be, Karen Vayu will do technology last. She always gets the best one anyway.
You do reverse order in budget season, so she gets to go home.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so district climate, again, a lot of this, you actually, when, last meeting, when you went over the climate plans, a lot of the first section deals with the climate plans, as you know. So what we standard operating practice or procedure is that you review the data in the spring, the principals review it, they have to do draft plans to be presented with their faculty in the fall, then their school-based plans are revised. One of the key things that we're looking at is the second step, which came up, is to look at more of a consistent approach in second step. Second step, just to remind everybody, is the other layer of social emotional curriculum that we're trying to implement at our elementary schools, pre-K 5. Some of our schools have a little advanced track on that, so what Carrie's been doing is shoring up that plan. She has meetings scheduled with the principals over the summer to talk about making sure that we have universal access. We have all the materials. It's just a matter of getting the professional development and implementation to occur, because as was brought to my attention by a board member and others, the schools, when you do look at the district climate survey data, and I look back over this weekend, the schools that have been a little bit farther along with responsive classroom and second step, their data does show some differences. And so we really do want to leverage that data, to encourage our principals, and it'd be, our principals would want to have their data to reflect that, because it's less burdensome, so to speak, for them too, if the environments are representing those changes in behavior. Again, goal 2, a lot of this is ongoing, so I don't want to, be repetitive as we move forward. Code of professional responsibility is goal 3. We do the annual trainings every November. Cindy's office with all of the online trainings. Again, a credit to the hard work of Cindy facilitating getting everything online so teachers are able to do it very quickly, as well as administrators are able to do it efficiently, I should say, as appropriate to state statute. We have the handbook that gets revised each year, the staff handbook, the staff go-to section, as well as an administrative resource Google Doc that is very valuable, that Cindy has put together a folder with contracts, with bullying policies, with harassment, with all those different things that a principal could know where to go to very quickly, or a superintendent knows where to go to very quickly if he or she gets questions.
Mr. Votto has a question.
Sure.
Speaking of questions. Oh, he can finish?
All right.
You can finish, then he
All
then he
right.
has a question.
So again, there a lot of the activities in goal 4 deal with the climate plans again. So that's a key piece there. We also continue with the social and emotional assessments, the DESA. which is key. We did implement that. We have a screening process. So that allows us to get some information for families. It allows us to identify which students potentially need social work or psychologist support, pre-referral, so we could start being proactive. I know sometimes we'll get questions from community members. What are we doing to address students who may be exhibiting signs of social and emotional issues or trauma? This was something that we've been proactive. We started this whole process back in 2015-16. So we have not shied away from addressing students preventatively. It gives us some of that information. The other area that could be added to this, but again, this was kind of, I know the board was aware of it, is that our work with trauma-informed issues and professional development, that's something you will see in this plan in the fall, because we are looking to offer staff development at the building-based level in those areas. But I didn't want to be premature having this in here because we are still identifying resources. What our goal is to create, and I've been working with Laura on this, having conversations as well as Tony Loomis, talking about creating a database for principals to go to with vetted resources in the area of trauma-informed professional development, as well as maybe sensory professional development, dealing with visual, as well as all the different senses, so that buildings could talk about that in their professional development plan and decide where they want to enter that point. So that's something that you'll see in the fall as we move forward, as we continue to revise this plan. So I will pause for questions, because I know I don't want Mr. Votto
Okay,
to wait
Mr.
too
Votto.
long.
Did you think I was gonna forget my question?
No, I figured you wrote it down.
No, I was just wondering, I don't actually, we didn't have the time to read this whole thing. With the climate survey that was done, some of the issues that were brought up in that survey that we felt needed to be maybe discussed, worked on, whatever, would that be now reflected in this,
It could be.
plan? Like some of your actions maybe need to be changed?
Yeah,
or
it could be,
attitude?
that would be based, that wasn't for this because this
I
was
realize
done
that,
at a
but-
different time, but that could be the case in the fall.
In the fall.
The key thing is if it was a building-specific, area of focus or area to address, then that would be something that we would be looking for at an administrative level in the building-based plan to address that.
Building-based plan.
If it were specific, if it's now something that's pervasive, if it's something that happens more and more, then it would be in the district. But we wouldn't call out specific buildings in this plan.
I'm talking, district-wide, because.
Yeah, then the
obviously
district-
that survey, that's what
Correct.
it was, so.
Well, no, but the data didn't come totally by district. If you remember, the data was by building. So there was that was school-based data.
Oh, all right, that's right.
That was all
Yeah,
school-based
even from the
data, so
parents'
that's,
perspective, right.
exactly. So that's where,
But if there was a general one or two that were throughout the whole system, even many schools, I'm just wondering if you're gonna include some of the things that were brought up in that survey. Do you think you might have to add to this?
we will definitely consider adding it. Again, I think the key area is to focus on the school plans because that's where it was identified.
Okay.
But we could, if it reflects it at a district level, similar to like I just mentioned about the trauma stuff, that's gonna be added in the fall in this document because we're getting that information now. It's becoming really, really a big topic. And we just didn't, when I was pulling this all together with a variety of resources, we just didn't feel comfortable putting it in here just yet
Yeah.
because we want to make sure we take the best step. I did put in here the ALICE training because that is happening and I could identify it. The trauma piece and some of these other areas, the state, we're hoping for some more guidance that we'll get so that we don't.
Where is that training in here?
The ALICE training should be in here. I think it was in this one, if I'm not mistaken.
That was one of my questions.
I forgot about that.
Where is,
I didn't see it.
That's all right, you don't have to move on.
I know
It's okay, sir.
I'll find it somewhere, because I know.
I'm just glad you mentioned it, because I had forgotten about that.
Oh, maybe no, you know what? I'm blurring two things together. It was in my update to staff today. If you read my Monday message about security, ALICE training was in that.
Okay.
So that was another piece that would be reflected in here. I apologize.
No problem.
I knew I just recently wrote ALICE in capital letters several times.
You should wait.
So,
Are any board members attending Alice training? Are any board members attending it?
We did,
I-
to
we
be
don't
honest, we didn't
normally
off,
open
yeah.
PD to-
Yeah.
We could, yeah, I mean, we
There's
don't,
probably a couple links on, could you send maybe a link or something about it to us?
sure, we could
Like,
send.
There's gotta be a YouTube link or something for us.
We actually have the link that is the web-based training. That's an hour. It's because what happens is with Alice training, just to give you a heads up, this summer we have 16 people from the district and town offices, meaning the police department, attending the training, and I believe it's in New Canaan. And so they're going to become trainer of trainers. So they're going to end up doing the training for all of our staff the first day of professional development prior to school starting. So it's 4 hours. It's a 4-hour training. We're going to do 4 consecutive hours that day because we could have doled it out over time, but then it would have taken a long time. And intuitively, it's like, okay, well, if you can train us early to be proactive, why wait till November? So we kind of went back and forth when we had our little administrative powwow. We are going to follow up, though, with the hour online at a later time, probably November-ish, December-ish, just as another, it might be earlier, to be honest. Is it that Friday? No, it might be a little bit earlier. But we decided, but that's the link that I could send all of you, is I could send you a link to that if you're interested.
Even if not, I'm not necessarily saying go to the piece over the summer, but perhaps so that we know what we're speaking about when we say we're Alice trained, to attend the 4-hour workshop in the fall. I'm not sure if there's a precedent set about that, but if you would be free and available and open to that, even if a board member can sit in on that, because it's really a impactful and powerful workshop training to attend.
I don't believe there's any issue with a board member attending it. PD is an opportunity. We could send that schedule. As I said, we're doing it building based, which they say is the best way to do it. So we're trying to follow to the best, because you have to know your structure, you have to know your physical scenario. So what we could do is we could put that out there, and that's fine with us. I agree with Aaron, because it's just watching the video and watching and reading about it. I don't think it does it. I don't think it gives you the full experience.
And honestly, it helped inform my decisions when we talked about certain security measures, whether we were paying or not paying for the windows and things like that. Had I not had Alice training, I probably would have been more inclined to spend more money on something I thought would have secured the building, when in reality it could be doing the opposite.
Yeah, I was thinking along those lines, Aaron, because I feel sometimes, the police can sometimes guide us, or the fire department, but, it's segmented opinions, if you will. So I could see, that's exactly what I was thinking, that sometimes I do feel, I don't want to say at a loss, but I don't necessarily feel as informed when I'm making decisions personally about how to spend taxpayers' money on security and safety. And I think that's something that is near and dear to everybody's heart. And, I would feel better to be able to speak better, I guess, to public about why I made certain decisions. So I'm down that road.
And that was what was helpful also by having Chief Wright so supportive of this, because having police officers go to the training with our staff this summer is key.
So again, you're consistent.
Because when we have that security team that gets together monthly, again, you get different opinions, but if they have that same common experience, I think that's very valuable. So we're very pleased that he was willing to send, I think it's 2 officers, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
I would definitely be open to the idea of attending, if
Okay.
you think it's appropriate.
No, I don't see why it wouldn't be.
Yeah, well, mull it over and see what makes sense.
Any more questions on district climate? Mrs. Raccio?
I just have one as a follow-up. As far as new staff, when we onboard them, there's a lot of training that we've done over the past few years for our staff, which is all great between the PD and the district climate. How do we, even like with Alice training, when we hire new people, how are we going to make them Alice certified? And
Well,
what's
what
the
we're
plan?
starting off with is, first of all, our new staff, that come in the start of the school year will be there for professional development.
Right.
What we're doing is actually training, and anybody who's a certified staff member or is on staff as of the first day of school as either a paraeducator, full-time staff member, they'll be part of the traditional training. We are implementing this year with the assistance and hard work of Cindy and Dave Bryant, training for our substitutes in those activities over the summer. So we actually just priced it out, and it was included in our budget to provide a day's worth of training. So we built it in, so they're going to get all the same training.
Even like the second step and the other types of programs that we're implementing district-wide as we bring in new teachers, or I wrote it down because I was thinking
Well,
about the
that's
social
part of
workers and
yeah, that's part of
psychologists.
new teacher orientation.
Okay, so all those get embedded in orientation?
Yeah, so
Okay.
we actually have grown orientation when I got here. I think it was, I want to say it was 1 day, 2 days, 1.5 day type of thing, where they had one full day and then a day where they had a half in the morning and then they worked in their classrooms. Now we're up to 3 days. So
Perfect.
they get soup to nuts. They get from their computers being doled out to them to all the key areas. But we are happy that we're doing the substitutes also. I think that's a really
Yes, that is
value-added one.
Right, you never know.
So, all right, I'm gonna pass out the facilities one. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot. You could shoot me the email and then I can help facilitate that for the time being. And then I'll follow that up once that goes around, not to confuse everybody with the technology. Oh, and don't. Yeah. Get back. Oops.
Sorry.
It's okay. All right, Ms. Veyu, you're on.
Okay. So goal one is really a coordination between curriculum and technology. Most of these are ongoing, and we work very closely together. There are some, such as developing a district database of our software and other tools that are happening through the passing of the new law of the Privacy Act. We are getting that information in as new contracts renew or go through. We are tracking all that, which in a somewhat of a way is making things easier. Goal 2 is ongoing as it relates to PD of staff. Goal 3, we've made significant strides. We've developed the plan for universal access in the middle schools next year and the one-to-one plan for our freshmen next year. As you know, the policy has been in front of you a few times now. So the policy should be, I believe, approved at the next board meeting. We've worked hard to increase our bandwidth and continue to utilize what's called Category 2 E-rate funding. Each year, we've taken a portion of our budget that originally used to be in the budget to lease equipment, and we've used that to pay for large pieces of our infrastructure, such as wireless upgrades, firewalls, things that are expensive. It has to go hand in hand with the whole E-rate process and the town bidding process, which is a challenge, but they're very good to us, and we work together to make sure they're advertised in the newspaper the same day it's on the website, and all that happens. But basically, we get a 50% matching to what we're paying for. So we want to continue to do that through your support. Then goal 4 is establishing contingency funds, which, as you know, we've been using either unencumbered funds or 1% to continue to chip away at our replacement cycle, and that's been working out well. And goal 5 is also just ongoing, as it identifies, it is about the effectiveness of technology tools, so that's about it.
As far as the E-rate, that That is, that's based on the free reduced lunch,
It is.
right?
Yep, there are two portions of the E-rate. There's Category 1 funding, which every school and library gets a portion of based on their free and reduced lunch. The Category 2 is about 3 years old, I bet, I believe, and it allocates a certain amount per each school district. And we have like a 5-year cycle to spend it. So, which is great, but since we're providing the other 50%, we have to be sort of aware of how much we can.
Do you also get a
Spending
reduced
share.
rate on like a utility or something like that? With the
So,
E-rate, like
we-
phone service or something?
There are a few things that it actually covers now. When the program first started, we did get reduced rates on phone bills, cell phone bills, and other utilities like that. They've pretty much phased all that out except for the highest
That's right.
schools that are getting free and reduced lunch, so more like at an 80% school. So, and you've probably seen it as our budget, our phone bills have gone up because we said,
That,
okay,
yeah, I
the,
was just gonna say.
the funding for phones went from 40% to now only 20%,
Yeah.
and then it's 0. So that's why our phone account sort of crept up over the last 3 years. But what they did was, although they eliminated that, they created this other piece called Category 2. Although it always existed, we would never qualify. Someone like a city, a Meriden, a Waterbury, they would get 80 cents on the dollar. So if they were buying something, and putting in jacks in the school, it was costing them 20 cents on each dollar. But we would not be eligible for that. When they revised it a few years ago, they created this fund of money, and we basically have 5 years to spend over $500,000, but we have to pay the other $500,000. So
It's like the security thing.
we've been averaging about 120 to 130 or 40 a year. I've been trying to keep it under. It's somewhat difficult because you have to come up with the project has to be bid, so you don't know what that final price is until it comes in, and I have to hope it's under to stay within the funds I have allocated, and yet I'm trying to chip away at the funding we have available to us, so. This year we did put in a new firewall, which was needed, and continue to update some of our wireless controllers throughout the district, so.
Thank you.
Other questions on technology?
If I can just conclude by just saying that I would like to thank all the central office staff for their support, as well as our administrators and our teachers that are on many of our committees. I think this is one of the positive, unique things that we do in Wallingford, which is this continual update. It is not it's definitely not something that is consistently done across the state, if not, outside the state. But it just shows the fact that there are so many people committed to making certain that we keep our eye on the prize. And as you just heard, having a technology coordinator who understands all of this ins and outs and has her finger on the pulse of everything. In terms of E-rates, I don't sign a thing without her telling me I can. She just got an email this afternoon about that. But she has really transformed the way that we do things. And I think that just is universally what we're seeing across the district by continuing to utilize these plans. So we appreciate the time tonight. I know it was probably longer than people expected, but we wanted to just give you that review. It was always our intent not to go line by line, but kind of give you an overview. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Transfer authority, so we got a memo in our packet regarding the request of the board that the superintendent of schools be granted authority effective June 19th, 2018 to make all transfers that will be required to complete the final financial report on the board's budget for school year 2017-2018. So this is what we usually do at the end of the year so that he can true up the accounts, which is what we spoke
Correct.
of before.
Correct.
Otherwise, we'd be having a lot more meetings.
Yes, and the thing is that there's a couple of things that, first of all, if we do have, if we true up the accounts and we realize, okay, there is that $52,000, then that's the first thing we move that over to that account to clean up that, so we have the 660. If there happens to be more than that, what I would just like to, again, every year we make this recommendation, you don't, basically, and give me the transfer, or giving the office this transfer authority, you know what we're doing. But what we'd like to suggest, and I don't know if there is going to be money or not, above that 52,000, but if there is, I've talked to both high school principals, that what we'd like to do is offer additional funds towards musical instruments. They always are special proposals that never get brought forward. So I have a new listing with, from the music department that I've shared with both high school principals and both middle school principals. They agree with these. What we would do is we would go through and look at trying to be equitable and give a little bit to each of the 4 schools, because the middle school programs are so vital to and important to our high school programs. But again, I'm not saying that I can't promise that that's going to occur. But again, we always give ourselves at least one item that the board gives us authority if we do have that opportunity to move into that account. And these would be things that we would be ready to purchase for the fall, so they would go in prior to July 1st. So we'd have them for band camp.
And they were already in the strategic.
Yes.
It's nothing new.
No,
We haven't seen before.
we've always had instruments in there some shape or form, or they've been special proposals by both principals. Every year, the principals put in special proposals, and they go through it, and unfortunately they can't always come to the surface. So I did talk to all 4 principals last week, and I said, if we have the money, are you okay with that? Do you have anything else you want to put forward? And they all like, oh no. I mean, they all knew the instruments off the top of their heads, what they needed. And the middle, it's nice though, because this department works very hard, and if we could give them a little bit to support them.
What about
That's great.
uniforms? They're okay?
Uniforms are good,
Yeah.
because remember, we won them.
Right.
They looked fantastic
They
at
did
the
look
parade.
Yes, they did.
Both high
glad you
schools
mentioned
looked,
it.
yeah, I mean, actually,
And our
my
middle
husband even
schools, don't,
commented.
hey, our middle schools look darn good.
Yeah, actually, my husband actually asked that question, like, did we just get all new uniforms? And I went back to that,
Yeah,
what was
we-
it, 50? I couldn't remember,
Yeah,
was it
50,000.
50,000?
It was a Pepsi challenge,
Yeah,
basically, so.
yeah.
That's right. I
Yeah.
forgot about that.
Yeah, we won
it
that,
was
yeah.
good. Yeah, it was
We were
a-
shaking the can, and
Yep.
at the same time, we were collecting money for something, and I was getting signatures at Stop and Shop at the same time. I don't
Yep.
know. I was just
That
shameless.
was-
At that point, I just wanted the money.
That was a great thing, yeah. And it
So-
showed, the uniforms looked
Yeah,
great.
so again, that's just what, I just wanted to clarify that, and we do every year, we kind of
But you
come
know
up
what,
with
my
something.
question about instruments, and I kind of, educate me on this. I kind of think of most kids pick up an instrument in elementary school. And they may change their instruments or whatever, but I kind of think of them as like maybe it's changed from my days, where you rented to buy an instrument, and your kid basically owned now that instrument. So we're laughing.
These
'cause
are
why?
tuba.
Okay, right,
But
I
you have
the
the
trumpet
saxoph-
and the saxophone.
But you have the
both.
saxophone and you have a marimba.
Okay,
You're not gonna,
You do rent
Gotcha.
until you eventually own? Is that what you
yeah.
Some
that's-
of
that's-
them.
Well, I think
but
the
not a
basic-
marimba.
Right, the basic instruments.
Not a
like, You
vibraphone.
start, I don't know, do we still start at 3rd grade, or what
There is a
grade?
big difference between what a saxophone costs and what a tuba costs.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, there is really,
So
it's a
it's-
huge
My
it's-
difference.
grandson has a violin.
Roxanne, it's 4th.
Does that mean he's gonna get that violin
4th?
eventually? They're
It
renting
depends
it
on
right
your
now?
rental agreement, but
Yeah,
you
that's-
can rent to rent, and then you can rent to own. and-
Right.
Yeah, these are items
Have it
that
for
are,
life.
So
these,
they're really unique
oh yeah,
instruments that.
these are
Gotcha.
tubas, these are
That's what I'm-
marimbas.
Okay, that
cro-
makes sense. Because
crotale.
but am I right? Is that program still in place,
Yes,
basically?
it starts in 4th grade.
Right, and kids basically, the parents make the decision whether they rent or rent to buy, And-
Right, each 3-5 school has a spring night in which all the third graders come in, if they can make it, and try out the
Okay.
different instruments, and they really do try to match the instrument to the child.
Yep.
And then the different companies that are local to Wallingford that
Yes.
assist the schools are there with their rental, they're able to explain all of the
Okay.
rental agreements
Right.
and insurance and what it entails and all of that. And it's been very, very successful in building the elementary programs.
Right. Because, my kids are 24, I don't know how old my kids, 25 and 23. And that was a vibrant, at least at the school they went to, it was a strong program. But I didn't know if it changed. So
Yeah.
these are really
These are,
unique
like-
instruments that
Yeah.
aren't your violin, your
No,
flute,
no,
your
these
trumpet,
are-
saxophone.
Most of them are from marching band. Like there's the mellophone.
Yeah.
That's
Is that like a banana phone?
I don't know,
I'm
but
sure there's certain drums that.
Yeah, the
Right.
percussion
Yes.
end
Don't
must be
buy
significant,
this.
yeah.
there's a lot here. There's like concert bells.
So really those stay in-house? And
Yes,
these are
these-
kids that, let's take percussion, for example. A student might already have a drum set, but this is a unique percussion instrument
Yeah.
that you would not own, or
Yeah,
or
no.
ask or expect a student to make that
Well,
kind of
they-
commitment.
Not to be funny, but they're not gonna bring to back and forth to school a xylophone.
Right,
I mean,
right, right, true.
Not
true.
conducive to the bus.
Right, you think? Got it.
We'd have to get special transportation.
Oh, boy. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that, though.
Euphonium?
The big vine.
Bass.
Bass.
That's a bass or a cello?
Okay, so getting a little
Let's do this.
more back on
All right,
track.
let's take consensus.
We're going to take consensus on granting the superintendent transfer authority, starting with Mrs. Corso.
Yes.
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 Yes,
Yes.
Okay, no.
Got you served.
you in a hurry?
Okay, discussion regarding encore course offerings at Moran Middle School and Dag Hammarskjöld Middle School.
I will start, and I will, of course, include my partner in personnel with me on this one. We're bringing forth tonight a challenge that we have, and it's not the first time you've heard this, but our family consumer science positions are very difficult to fill. This year, we have 3 positions to fill. And right now, we have interviewed because Cindy put the positions out very quickly. We've done a lot of activity around them. We are able to fill 2 positions very successfully. The third position is becoming less likely that we're going to have a candidate that we would want to move forward to our schools at this time. So what we are considering is moving towards a different model at the middle school in terms of family consumer science at one of the 2 middle schools. Lyman Hall right now, as you know, has the Vibrant Foods program. We're moving into the bakery. So we'd like to maintain our program that we presently have for family consumer science at DAG as, no pun intended, a feeder program to the Lyman Hall program. At Moran, though, because we are going to be short one of our positions for family consumer science, is that we maintain one of the 2 family consumer science classes, and what we'd like to add in the place of the other, because investigating it with certification, there is no special certification for this, is we'd like to implement a technology class, programming/coding. So computer technology class there. We are going to use as our curriculum for that the first semester as we at the first trimester as we write the course. We're very fortunate that we have a partnership with TechTrep, the company that has the online modules. One of the modules is computer programming and computer coding and development. So it's a 10-week course. So we're going to use that as the initial piece of it as we write. And we don't usually like to do this, but as we finalize that curriculum. We just don't feel that there's going to be viable candidates. And I'll let Cindy step in at this time.
No, and we did repost the family consumer science position, and we've gotten, I think, 2 additional candidates applying, but it's not a trend that's going to get better in the next few years. So right now, there's only 1 school university in Connecticut that certifies for family consumer science, that's St. Joe's. A teacher can cross-endorse through one of the community colleges in Hartford, but these candidates aren't going to be plentiful. And they're not earmarked even as a shortage area by the state because they've become so few and far between that other schools before us have already started to reduce their family consumer science programs. What causes a program to be considered a shortage area is a survey that goes to human resources offices and personnel offices in different school systems at the end of the year. You have to say, these are the areas where we tried to hire, and these are the areas where we didn't find qualified candidates in abundance for ourselves. If there's a high enough number of schools that were looking for a certain kind of candidate in a certain area that all report they had trouble finding it, that becomes a shortage area. There's no longer schools reporting that they can't find family consumer science teachers because they're not looking for them anymore. So it's not going to change the trend. It's going to continue to be a shortage area for us. So unless we start to move to a different model, the dearth of teachers is going to just become more and more significant every year.
Go ahead, Mr. Vano.
I think Roxanne.
That's okay, I can wait. It's okay, no worries.
So at this point, you don't foresee that as being a deficit area then, because it's just there's not a demand for it?
You mean a deficit
deficit
area
area, in other words,
in the
where
student's education?
No,
A shortage.
a shortage.
Yeah.
We called it a deficit. So in other
Right,
words,
right.
where you were able to hire a retired person
Right, so
and
that's,
pay them for a couple of years, even though they're collecting a
right, and I don't foresee it's no longer on that list. A couple years ago it was. It's no longer on that list. So you can get, we call it a DSAP now, a durational shortage area permit. It's no longer a DSAP area, so.
So we're gonna offer there's gonna be one family consumer science?
Yeah, in family
at Moran?
Yeah, in family consumer science, there are two classes. There's one that is the cooking, the foods and nutrition, and then there's one that does sewing and
Right.
such. So what we're going to do is, and Rob Covey was part of this conversation, and Kate O'Donnell also, as well as the middle school principals. We brought them together too. This was not, actually, it wasn't even our idea, to be honest. We worked with them, and they brought to us a plan, and we said, okay, it's kind of making sense. So Rob would be working with the remaining teacher at Moran to work on developing a hybrid of the two courses. This person is a veteran teacher, so we're confident that this person could do this very capably. And then again, DAG would have the two staff members, so they would maintain the two sections. The other section for computer science would be housed in the computer lab. We never disbanded all of our computer labs. We kept them, so we don't need any additional resources. There's no additional procurement, and especially with the free resource of this online curriculum, and it's all secure platform. It's not advertising. It's all done on Canvas, a self-contained platform. We're kind of in a good position to do that.
Okay.
Mrs. McKay.
Thanks. So, okay, so you kind of hit on a few of what I was going to ask. What exactly does a year in family consumer science look like? You said cooking, food, nutrition.
There's some financial literacy, which we want to maintain.
Yep.
There's sewing.
I think
So
there's a little bit of a
baking.
craft section.
there's a little craft. The cooking is part of the baking.
Isn't
So
the
those are the
child-
key
childcare-
areas.
Was
So-
the childcare one where the kids used to take home a baby?
That's
No,
not till high school.
That's high school. Because
Yeah.
remember, they get one of each of these one trimester, but they don't get them the same trimester. So because we're on the
Who's they? You mean
The
the
students.
Middle
schools?
schoolers.
the students.
Okay. So,
It's not a full year course.
right, okay, I got that. So, I mean, I do think nutrition is important. I guess I would want to pick and choose. Sewing, if you're missing a button in my house, it gets thrown out. So I have no use personally for that. Though I'm sure for many people, that's a very nice thing.
We were looking at cooking, we were looking at nutrition, we were
Yep.
looking at financial
Financial
literacy.
would be
Those were
important.
the key thing, the
Okay.
nutritional, the financial literacy pieces.
I mean, I guess,
They all tie to our risky behavior or our student behavior surveys. We're trying to draw from that too.
Perfect. I guess, though, I'm wondering, why can't we kind of rip the Band-Aid off at DAG too?
Well, we don't have an open position, and so
I know, but why not modify the, what the course structure looks like? I mean, just make it universally, make the change on both sides.
Because
I
we-
understand you have 2 teachers, and I'm not
Correct.
looking to displace the teacher. That's not what I'm suggesting. But if you're changing the curriculum at Moran, can you make those same changes at DAG, that the 2 individuals that are at DAG can make those changes? Or, you know what I'm trying to say?
It would cause an issue where there wouldn't be sufficient electives for the number of students. The student body is larger
At
at
DAG?
DAG.
Well, actually, it doesn't have to do with student body number. It has to do with the fact that you need to have 2 distinct offerings at both schools to create the master schedule. So you can't make, because this is what I initially thought. You're actually on the same road that I was traveling, and then I got derailed off of that road.
Okay.
Was that family consumer science? There's 2 sections. It's 2 different courses, totally different courses. So if we had them both teach the same course, we would have one less place to put kids because they couldn't take it
Right,
twice.
okay, I see. But why not revamp and I'm not trying to, again, it may not be appropriate for the fall, but could
Like-
we look at revamping our programming?
Well, I think that goes into the facilities and programming study.
Okay.
So
okay,
that
that's
was
fair.
why
That's fair.
when we didn't want to
Okay.
move too many parts and pieces
Okay,
to
that's
this,
fine.
because
That
if we
answers my
want to,
que- I'm good with that.
yeah,
I'm good with that answer.
we wanted to come through that process.
But I would like to revisit that.
Oh,
I'm hoping.
absolutely.
I mean, I think that, I'm not suggesting sewing and crafting isn't important, but in today's world, I just think, what?
Coding is way.
Oh, coding is, and I'm kind of jealous that one side of town potentially is getting it and the other side isn't at middle school. That's why I'm saying, can we kind of just put this in our back pocket once the facility studies comes back to say, can we revamp and appropriately, again, I'm not trying to job eliminate anybody, but makes sense for both sides to mirror each other on this.
Correct, and we totally agree. And I think the only reason why, because that was my philosophical problem. too,
Yeah.
was the fact that I was looking to try to combine the 2 and say, okay, well, there we go. The thing is, the only reason why it would work in my mind this year as a stopgap measure is the fact that we do have the foods program at Lyman Hall, and if we
I get that.
and
I'm
if we
comfortable with
cut
that.
one of the family consumer sciences, and if we did what we're doing at Moran, at DAG instead this coming year, then they wouldn't get all the foods preparation course
Yep.
component that they would potentially need
Right.
in order to
I
have
do
that
get
full
concerned
exposure.
a little bit because there could be students at Moran that wouldn't know that they're interested in food service.
Well,
if they
they'll still
didn't-
get enough, but
Okay, so that if that becomes a passion for them, that option, obviously to go to Lyman Hall would still, the door's open there.
Correct.
I just want, what's good for the goose is good for the gander on both sides of town is all I'm trying to say. But it sounds like I'm fine with a stopgap year like that.
because the
to make
initial
those
idea
changes.
that we had until we better understood the need for 2 distinct courses was, we hear that the makerspace classes are large. Well, we thought, we'll just add another section of makerspace, but that doesn't give them another place to go. They need
Physically, yeah,
They need
yeah,
another
yeah.
elective opportunity.
I understand.
If we
Okay.
continue with the model we have, which I like, which is choice.
Yes.
So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Mrs. Raccio?
I'll share about my son that he did a capstone project this year, and his capstone project was going down to the middle school and teaching coding and programming. And it was at Moran, and he was actually surprised. So I will go on record, don't write the curriculum too fast. I know you never hear that from me. But he was surprised how much they knew. They were ahead of him. So it was karma. I loved it. But they were just ripping through things that he thought he would take 3 weeks to cover, and they were doing it in the course of 1 week. So it might not just impact Moran. You might end up having to look at Intro to Computer Science or Intro to Computers at Sheehan afterwards.
Mrs. Corso?
two things. One, it goes along with our STEM town, so
Right.
it's important. But in the short term, I know that kids have already made selections and choices for what they would like to have next year. And how will you determine what students then are now taking computer science rather than 2 family and consumer science courses?
We talked to Mr. Piacentini about that, and he said that he would, once we made the decision, if there were consensus tonight, then they would communicate that to the students and see if there's any adjustments. Schedules haven't been set yet. That's the good news. Classes have been set up, so they would go from there.
And then, instructor-wise, we have an instructor in district, or are we looking outside of district to hire? Are we
Well, we-
writing a new job description? How are we gonna?
We're writing a new teaching position description for that course. Then we'll have to post it internally. We can post it internally and externally simultaneously. If we have internal candidates, we'll often interview them first. If we have very few internal candidates, sometimes we'll interview the internal and external simultaneously. And then depending on if we have what we need in district, and has the ripple effect.
Right.
And just, again, I know you all know this, this is not a new it's not an added position to the
Right.
budget, it's
Right.
just a different classification.
Right,
But just
Mr.
for those watching, eh?
right.
Mr. Votto?
The other encore, there are other encore subjects, like
Yes,
art,
art,
music.
there's 2 different arts, they have, because again, they're never, it's not where there's just one art curriculum, so there's a 2 different versions of art, and there's 2 different versions of technology education. There's health, there's makerspace, there's family consumer science, and then there's also music and physical education.
So the kids get to choose, though.
Yes,
Like now for next year, they've already done that?
yep. Yep,
That's
they-
Aaron's point.
Yeah.
And this
Yeah.
was different. We've switched to the choice model now. I think now we're going on our 3rd year. It used to be where everybody kind of just, there was no choice. They just did what they had to do.
Everybody took sewing.
So we're trying to give them options along the way.
We already have two technology courses
Yes, and there's
now.
some coding in there, so that's where we want to be cautious because there is some coding going on in one of the technology classes. So that's why we have to balance it.
So this third one will be considerably different.
Yeah, there's transportation technology in one area, and then there's a drafting type of technical drawing tech ed class. So this is definitely a different offshoot of that, rather.
Okay.
Any other questions about this issue? All right, seeing none, we'll take consensus on changing the encore offering at Moran Middle School.
Yes.
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 Oh my.
Brings us to our public comment portion of the agenda.
I'm busting down the
Seeing
doors.
no public, I assume that there's no public comment, so we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.